such a thing. But
Hey guys, it's Scott Bars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 168th episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it has, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. So there's a few different kinds of concept albums that exist within hip-hop, with the most common type arguably being the ones that use a grand theme, and then everything that transpires on the project after that pretty much falls under that umbrella. Some of the classics in that department that come to mind are Public Enemy's Fear of a Black Planet, De La Soul's De La Soul is Dead, Little Brothers, The Minstrel Show, Dr. Octagon Ecologist by Dr. Octagon, Splendor and Misery by Clipping, A Piece of Strange by Cunning Linguists. Disposable Arts are really a number of the albums that Masta Ace has released throughout his career, and that includes the Masta Ace Incorporated output. But when it comes to the type of concept that plays like a sonic movie in your mind, outside of the autobiography of Kirk Jones by Sticky Fingers, or something like 12 Reasons to Die, which was a collaboration between Ghostface Killah and the producer Adrian Young, in my opinion, nothing really comes close to Prince Among Thieves by Prince Paul. Of course, in more modern terms, I'd have to give that honor to Kendrick Lamar's Good Kid, Mad City when it comes to a straightforward, linear story. But the plotline that K-Dot put together for that album had already been done, arguably in an even grander way, well over a decade earlier with Prince Paul's masterpiece here. While the label Tommy Boy ultimately fumbled the bag once again by not allowing Prince Paul to fully realize his vision of a true hip hop movie to complement this soundtrack, personally, I still have at least a little nugget of hope that one day we'll eventually see the entire independent motion picture the way Paul intended. It definitely isn't too likely, though, especially because with the more time that passes, the more and more artists and old school legends who appeared on this LP either pass away or retire, or in the case of Chub Rock, kind of fall out of good favor with the artist. That's kind of a unique case because, to my knowledge, Chub Rock and Prince Paul don't really have a working relationship due to a falling out over an unpaid loan, which, as far as I know, still hasn't been repaid to this day. The idea of a hip hop movie wasn't completely unheard of, as Paul himself has disclosed how he first got inspired to attempt this undertaking after seeing the massive popularity and return that Master P made with his I'm Bout It movie, which was a resounding success despite its relatively low budget and somewhat homemade feel. Prince Paul saw this and felt that he had the tools and connections to make a true tale for the ages. All he needed was the proper funding and backing from the label. Unfortunately, as we would later learn through their hostage negotiation handling of De La Soul's catalog, Tommy Boy, more specifically its founder Tom Silverman, showed little to no interest in any artistic integrity at this point, and they just couldn't see the vision that Paul was pitching them. They basically kneecapped any possibility of crafting a full-fledged cinematic experience, at least on the visual side, resulting in a music video that, while pretty dope, is just kind of snippets of certain tracks, acting as more of an extended trailer or short film than the full-length experience that this project warranted and deserved. But enough talking about what could have been, because there's no use crying over spilt milk, especially when we did receive a full-length movie. In a sense, it's just an auditory one, which in my opinion really isn't much of a negative. It actually gives us a quality that you inherently don't get in TV or film, where through the voices and personalities you hear, it's up to your own mind to paint the picture and choose what the setting looks like. In a way, it's almost like reading a book, where it gets personalized for each reader subconsciously through their own previous experiences. However, the actual planning and execution of the concept album really couldn't have been more calculated and meticulously thought out, with Paul penning the story itself well before he had anyone assigned to the roles, or began laying down the music. The reason he cast a myriad of MCs in the various roles for characters is because if you didn't know, Paul isn't really a rapper himself, so this stands as a special project where a producer isn't just inviting a bunch of legends on to rap over his beats. He's pretty much directing them and giving them notes on how to deliver their lines. That takes more than just guts, it takes a true visionary to be able to see this finished product in your mind and then stand his ground when it actually comes down to taking steps to achieve that, opposed to taking the easy route of just letting these insanely busy and famous artists come in, do one take how they saw fit, and call it a day. I've heard Paul discuss Big Daddy Kane being in the studio. I'm pretty sure he actually even had Kane rewrite his verse or at least use a different one, just because initially it didn't really feel right for the character. And I'm sure that was something that Kane wasn't used to, especially at this time. But as uncomfortable as those situations most definitely were, they were also absolutely necessary, and all the little tricks and rules Prince Paul had during this LP's creation, like only giving the featured artists their parts and not the entire script, all ultimately add up into a true masterpiece of storytelling in hip hop. Not one of the rappers included on here plays themselves in this story. Every single one is a character with a different, unique role, and so I believe the only MCs given the full script beforehand were the two leads in this tale, played by two insanely underrated and extremely talented rappers, those being Breeze Bruin of Juggernauts and Big Shaw. Breeze has long been one of my favorite MCs, as he has one of the coldest and most original flows in the game, and his smooth voice makes him the perfect protagonist opposite to Shaw, whose more gritty and raspy voice makes him the perfect villain for the story. This too was totally intended, and a big part of why this LP is able to put across such an excellent story, as Prince Paul has discussed how arguably the most important thing to him when he was casting all these roles was how memorable and distinct each voice was, since he knew that's all the listener would have to go off of when it came to creating these characters in their head. In some aspects, this classic kind of reminds me of the first volume of the Lyricist Lounge, where all the main performers are pretty much interchangeable with guest appearances. And for Prince Among Thieves, Paul definitely recruited some of the biggest and best names he could find. While he famously wasn't able to get certain dudes like Vanilla Ice on the project due to his short-sighted and closed-minded manager who thought they were making fun of him, either way, Everlast of House of Pain does a more than adequate job in that role, playing the racist, corrupt, but weirdly honest police officer. I'm not going to delve into the story itself much, since you really need to experience it for yourself, and similarly, I don't really have time to disclose exactly what every guest appearance plays in terms of a character, but I will give a list of the people that contributed, which I haven't named yet, which includes artists like Heroin, Horror City, Cool Keith, Superstar, Chris Rock, Sweet D, Newkirk, King Creole, Exhibit, De La Soul, Sadat X of Brand Nubian, and Biz Markie. Prince Paul handled 100% of the production here by himself, and that's insanely impressive when you consider just how flawless every beat placement is on here. Literally every instrumental is just killer, and many feature recognizable samples from other legendary tracks, like on What You Got, where Breeze and Shaw trade off dope sets of bars while driving around, where you'll probably recognize the infamous horn sample that would later be used on the classic DMX song Where the Hood At a few years down the line. The same thing in reverse is also done on Prince Among Thieves, where Paul uses a recognizable loop coming off Ice Cube's death certificate. I also think the awesome track where Heroin and Breeze trade off lines is up there with Victor Vaughn and Apani B's Can I Watch or Kendrick's We Cry Together as some of the best hip hop material where a male and female MC spit bars back and forth in the form of an argument. But the plot of Prince Among Thieves and the way it's structured even kind of has a similarity to Pulp Fiction. At least that's a comparison that I kind of see. Because Paul does a similar sort of trick where the very end of the story is actually where the album begins, making it a full circle experience, as well as giving us some flashes and subtle hints as to where the story's going to go when you go back and listen to it a second or third time, knowing what's actually in store. For my top three favorite songs overall on here, I'd probably have to go with Pain, War Party, and You Got Shot. And for honorable mentions, I would have to choose tracks like What You Got, The Other Line, Weapon World, Macula's Theory, Put the Next Man On, Handle Your Time, More Than You Know, and A Prince Among Thieves, the title track. Thank you for watching my 168th video. Next time, we're going to discuss one of the most legendary and iconic trios to ever touch down in New York, So look out for that upload. And if you enjoyed, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite songs are off what I consider hip hop's definitive concept story album. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? All right.
Who would do such a thing? Look, I stand in the flame of a feeling we call pain. Father's Day mug, little hand shaped of clay. Carrier planes flew overhead in pockets.